And we are back on WGN-TV Political Report. So this week, a promise from President Joe Biden to put an end to America's longest war. Biden's argument, no amount of American resources would resolve the country's problems. He wants the final withdrawal by August 31st, and the president is defending his decision, saying it's time for Afghans to defend their own country. The Taliban is already making inroads, but Biden says history suggests there's nothing the U.S. could do about it. My next guest is a former U.S. diplomat, author of The Dissent Channel, American Diplomacy in a Dishonest Age. Elizabeth Shackelford is now a senior fellow of U.S. foreign policy with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and she joins us this morning to discuss what is next. Ms. Shackelford, good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I'm actually picking up on an op-ed that you wrote in the Tribune back on July 2nd, in which you said that the security situation in Afghanistan is deteriorating, and it's prompting many to second-guess the president's decision to withdraw these troops, a date that was to be September 11th that now moved up to August 31st. So does the government of Afghanistan seem more stable to them than it does to you?
It's not a question of whether the government of Afghanistan is more or less stable. The challenge right now is that there really isn't anything that we can do to make the government more stable, whether we stay for another 6 months, another year, or another 10 years. And we've proven that over time, as President Biden has said in his recent remarks.
Lots of concern about the interpreters and the drivers and those people who have been helping us there. The president is aware of that. He said we're getting them out of harm's way. Do you have faith in that? I mean, the last time we sort of left an area in Iraq, there were a lot of Kurds people that helped us who were left to not do so well. So what faith do you have that we will get these folks out?
I understand what's going on at the moment, and I know I do have a lot of faith in the ability of the State Department personnel who are reviewing a lot of this, and the Department of Defense, because this is right now probably one of our top priorities, as it should be. These are people who have been side by side with us, helping protect our troops throughout the war, and I believe that President Biden has made it clear that this is our priority. Are we going to be able to get to make everything absolutely smooth? I'm certain that we won't, but I think we'll do the best that we can. And after 2 decades of war, you've got to understand that there are limitations to what we can accomplish in the country. But I am very pleased to hear how seriously the government is taking this commitment to these people who've helped us.
You know, a lot of people are wondering, has this whole thing for 20 years been worth it? The president says it has. We got Osama bin Laden, but that was like 10 years ago. And some would say, look, there hasn't been an attack on the U.S. in all the time we've been there. So, yes, there are some benefits. My question to you, from your view, how safe are we and how safe will we be in the coming months and years?
I found it really interesting that President Biden, insisted on saying that the 20 years in Afghanistan has been worth it. I think that there's this hesitance of ours to admit that it really hasn't been. But as you've said, the reasons that we initially went into Afghanistan, we accomplished at least a decade ago, some of them many years before that. But the threat landscape for the United States in the world has changed dramatically in the last 20 years. Afghanistan is no longer even close to the top of that. If you're talking about terrorism, the counterterrorism efforts that we have across the globe, we're targeting a number of places. And if we have all of our resources pulled into Afghanistan, that's less that we can do to focus on potential terrorist threats in parts of the rest of the world. I think that I have a lot of faith in our ability to keep terrorism at bay. I also think that we need to be investing more in other challenges, such as issues like a pandemic. I mean, we saw last year, all the military in the world can't protect Americans, and many more Americans died during the COVID pandemic than died in 9/11 by adding zeros to that number. So I think that it's really the right decision. I think that we know, and our intelligence services are perfectly capable of catching up on threats as they emerge. But that's really our #1 national security priority remaining in Afghanistan, is to make sure that we have eyes on enough to see if a threat that can hit us in the homeland is emerging in that landscape.
Well, you suggested in your op-ed back on July 2nd that the takeover by the Taliban, it's a foregone conclusion. Staying there would be like Vietnam, where, of course, Saigon fell almost immediately upon our leaving. Do you suggest that if we stay, we're simply postponing the inevitable? Is there any chance the wheels can stay on this car?
I don't necessarily think that falling to the Taliban is a foregone conclusion. I think it's a possibility. But I think that if we stay, we will only prolong whatever is going to happen next. A lot of people have been comparing this to the tragedy of the fall of Saigon, but none of those people are arguing that we should still be in Vietnam this many decades later. So I think it's an emotional response to look to that. What would happen if we stay is that we will maintain a bloody, violent status quo. What happens if we leave, frankly, we're not sure of. We are going to stop propping up a corrupt, bad government that has not really found a way to deliver to its people. They've been calling our bluff for years. We've been saying that they need to prepare this country to be able to lead it on their own. We have given every benefit to the Afghan military, but we can't force them to have a better government. We've proven that. So what's going to happen next? There will be a change. It might be worse. It might be better. It might be bad in the next couple of years. But what also might happen is that with changes of circumstances, perhaps different players that we were preventing from coming to the peace table might be more pressed to do so.
Elizabeth Shackelford, Senior Fellow on U.S. Foreign Policy with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Thank you for your time. I appreciate that. Lots of great insight, Lizzie. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.